Hi everyone, in this video we will create a two-dimensional array of doubles, ask the user to enter their values and print out the 2D array. So to start off, I've already got this counter object created and closing off before the finish of the program. So the code will be written in between those lines. I'm going to start off by declaring my multidimensional array to be of type double, and this indicates that this array is of 2 dimensions, and my array reference is going to be called 2D. Right now I'm not going to give it any size because we will ask the user to decide the size of the array. So you can see that the 2D array is this is our reference. Right now it's not referring to anything, but as we create our program, this will eventually refer to a 2-dimensional array. So we'll start off by asking the user the number of rows and columns for the 2-dimensional array. So I would need to declare those variables of type integer, just a number from the user. So number of columns and number of rows. Next we'll use system.out.print, and I'm going to use the print method instead of the print line because I don't want it to print a new line after displaying this message. So I would want it to keep the user on the same line. Then what I'll do is I'll assign user entry to the number of rows, and I'm going to use the next integer method to grab entry from the user. I'm going to do the same for the number of columns. Just change the message and of course change the variable. So assuming that the user would enter 4 for the rows and 3 for the columns, our array would be of size 4 by 3. So we now need to actually create the array. So using our reference, we would now create an array of the dimensions using user's input. So this is depending on what values the user would put. Okay, next what we want to do is ask the user to enter these values. So we need a for loop that loops through the 2D array and up to that number of rows, and then another for loop to loop through the number of columns. So I'm going to use a for loop, and I'm going to create a local variable called draw counter, and this is going to start looping from the index 0. And this is the variable that I'm referring to in this Excel cell. Okay. Next, what I'll do is I would want row counter to stop the loop when this has reached the number of rows. Next, I'll increment row counter by 1 at each round. So what we are basically doing right now is looping from 0 to 3. So this is kind of a visual of what our 2D array would look like. So each row would have, assuming the user enters 3, would have 3 columns. So what we want to do is we want to loop at index 0, then inside index 0, loop again for the columns, and then at each index of the 2D array, get user's entry. So I'm going to need another for loop, a nested loop that would go inside here. But instead of row counter, I'm going to call this a column counter, which is also equivalent to this counter that I've got there. Okay, so just a few changes, and this would stop when this is reached the number of columns, because they could be different values. Like this case, this is 4 by 3. So we would want to loop only up to the number of columns that were entered by the user. Next, what I want to do is assign each value in our array on that index as specified by the user's values. So what I want to do is at that row counter, or at that index, at that particular column index, using the scanner reference input, grab that next double. using the next double method to get a double value from the user. So what we've done so far is we've asked the user to give the dimensions of the 2D array, and we've used these dimensions to create our 2D array, and then we've used 2 loops to fill out our array using the scanNNX double method. If we want to display the results back to the user, we actually need to loop through the array again, but this time what we want to do is I want to display a message to the user and saying what we are doing, so display of 2D array, and I would like a new line after that. Okay, and then what we are doing is I'm going to use the same variables there. So this is a local variable that is only known within this block. This is a local variable that is known only within this block. So outside of this block, it is not identified. And notice that Eclipse is complaining. Okay, so I can safely use the same names in the second part of the program where we are printing our arrays. Now what goes different is here. We don't want to get user input because we've already got that previously. Instead, what we want to do is print out the values that were entered by the user. So I'm going to use the printf method so that we can format our displayed. So I'm going to use a formatting rule of 1 decimal place and indicating this is going to be a double using the letter F. We do want a space after each value. So 1.1 space 2.2 and so on. And then here what I want to do is display that value. So I just need to give the indices of the array, of the 2D array. And that's about it. And after each, so this will print, this is going to access each row. Okay, so for each row, and this is for each column. Okay, so what we are doing is that each row, then loop through 1, 2, 3, the column, and display the data. And then after each row, I would want to just print a blank new line. So I'll just use print line, and I'll keep nothing in there. Okay, let's give this a run, and let's see what it looks like. So the number of rows, I'm going to say 4. And the number of columns is 3. Notice the entry is stuck next to on the same line. This is because I've used the print method, not print line. Okay, now I should ask the user to actually enter the values. I should have a message because the user might be confused. So I might want to give a message after each for each row. So I could say enter the values for row, and I could specify what row I'm meaning. So I'll use a row counter and just a colon there. Okay, and I may want a new line right after this because we do not have a new line because of the print method. So let's try this again. So the number of rows is 3, the number of columns is 0. So at row 1, enter the value. So I'm going to do 1.1, 2.2, and 3.3. And for row 1, I'm going to enter these values. So 4.4, 5.5, and 6.6. And for row 2, I'm going to print those enter those values. So 7.7, 8.8, and 9.9. And for the third row, I'm doing those values. So 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. Okay, so I have an error. My program crashed. I'm going to click on the error, and the compiler will highlight the part that is causing the error. And so it's because of that 0 sign. It was not supposed to be there. So I've put 1 for 1 decimal place. And I'm going to run the program again and enter the values of 4 by 3 and the same values again for the second row and for the third and for the fourth and last made a mistake with the order. Okay, so the display of the 2D array is printing the content of the array with one space in between, as we indicated here. And so yeah, we do have all the values. We could have a tab if you wanted. So I could do a backward slash tab, and this will put more spaces between the values. So let's see how that runs. Okay, so it's a bit more clear to see. And that's about it. I'll see you in the next video where we do 3D arrays. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.